the first bill on the agenda is mine, so I will hand the virtual gavel over to Representative Katiza-Watun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like to move your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move House File 844 be recommended to be placed on the General Register.
Okay. Chair Stevenson moves that House File 844 be recommended to be placed on the General Register. We also do have an author's amendment labeled A4. Would you like to go ahead and move that amendment to get the bill in the shape you'd like the committee to consider today?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would move the A4, which is an author's amendment. It represents a culmination of a lot of discussions with a lot of people in our business community, and most notably the Retailers Association, who I can't say enough about how constructive and positive they have been to work with. So I'd ask the committee to adopt the A4.
Members, any discussion on the A4 amendment? Seeing no hands, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion prevails and the A4 amendment is adopted. Chair Stevenson, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, earlier this month, we had an extreme weather event that covered most of the middle of the country. Record cold, ice, snow hit Texas, Oklahoma, and other states. Due to deregulation, incompetent grid management, and impossibly poor planning by both public and private sector officials in Texas, hundreds of thousands of Americans went without power for days. And in fact, I heard on the radio as I was coming in to the state office building this morning that there are still thousands of people in Texas without access to clean water. Across Texas, there were reports of huge spikes in the prices of essential goods and services. Food, bottled water, and hotel rooms surged in price, making a terrible situation even worse. Some hotels that still had power increased their prices over $1,000 a night. The price of natural gas also spiked to unconscionable levels. Gas that normally sold for $2 a decatherm sold for over $1,000 a decatherm on the Oklahoma market. Texans are now facing energy bills in the thousands upon thousands of dollars. The fact that people profited to an absurd extent, that they took advantage of the pain and misery of others in a moment of desperation, is just morally bankrupt. Fortunately for Texans, their state has a law against price gouging in an emergency, and it's a tough one. Violators can face fines of up to $250,000. Investigations are ongoing, and law enforcement officials in the state are promising action. 35 other states have laws against price gouging during a disaster. Minnesota, by contrast, has no such law, and our citizens would be without recourse if something like what happened in Texas were to happen here. This bill would change that. It would make it illegal to price gouge during a disaster declared by the governor. It would fine people who do price gouge and allow for restitution for victims. It also establishes clear expectations for what is permissible and impermissible pricing behavior during an emergency. Businesses won't be left wondering what they can and can't do. You know, one thing I love about living in Minnesota is that when a disaster strikes, we really do take care of each other, and it never really fails. Whether it's as simple as helping a stranger out of the ditch after a bad snowstorm, or the people in my district who hand-sewed masks for healthcare workers when we had the PPE shortages last spring, Minnesota is full of good people with big hearts, and that extends to our business community. I really believe that the vast majority of businesses in Minnesota would never engage in this kind of behavior. They want to be, and in fact are, good members of our community. But the fact that a few people in Minnesota would price gouge doesn't mean that there shouldn't be accountability for those that do. This bill is about ensuring that accountability. It's about protecting Minnesotans when they're most vulnerable. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer questions, but first I think we have some testifiers, including the Attorney General.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Stevenson, for introducing your bill. First on the list, I do have Attorney General Keith Ellison. Mr. Attorney General, would you like to introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair and Ranking Member and all members, thank you all for allowing us to be a part of this vital conversation. Representative Stevenson, my thanks to you for bringing forward this much needed bill to combat price gouging in Minnesota in times of emergency. You know, the fact is that during the COVID pandemic, we did see price gouging. We had to pass an executive order to prevent it. I'm glad that my colleague in Texas, Mr. Ken Paxson, has the tools he needs to try to protect Texans. We need similar tools here, and I think that this is a very thoughtful compromise, and I hope that the committee looks favorably. You know, protecting Minnesota consumers from being taken advantage of by predatory pricing practices in the middle of a public health crisis, weather disasters, and other emergencies is fundamental to helping all Minnesotans afford their lives and live with dignity and respect. As amended, House File 844 would prohibit price gouging of essential goods and services during and after, for 30 days, a public emergency is declared by the governor. The bill focuses on core essential goods and services necessary for public health and welfare, and a non-exhaustive list that includes food, fuel, lodging, and medical goods and services. Just so folks know, we're not talking about pricey goods here. We're talking about things that people need to survive. The bill also prevents sellers from charging prices that are in gross disparity with pre-emergency prices. Importantly, this bill balances the needs of retail sellers by allowing sellers to increase prices if their wholesale costs go up, which is perfectly understandable, and by prohibiting price increases at earlier points in the chain of distribution that harm retail sellers and end up hitting consumers. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us the importance of putting price ceilings on in place during emergencies. Not all the time, just during emergencies. In the early days of COVID-19, Governor Walz put in place a price gouging prohibition that I've already mentioned that prevents sellers from charging more than 20% over the product's pre-pandemic price. There was a defense that if the retail prices for that, if the wholesale prices for the retailer went up exorbitantly, the retailers had a defense, which we thought was appropriate. But that executive order helped us, and we use it quite a lot. The Attorney General's office has taken significant actions under the executive order. That's Executive Order 2010, including more than 2,400 complaints received and investigated. We've responded to them all. More than 100 informal resolutions after the contact. That means our people call them up, they tell them what the executive order says, and they say, you can't do that. And the retailers say, I get it, okay. 6 court file settlements stopping gouging behavior and recovering restitution for Minnesotans. And these are representative of the items that we've received many of the complaints about in the early days of COVID. And as you all recall, when the quarantine went into place and the pandemic started, it really did evolve. In the beginning, we were having to enforce on certain items. That changed as supply increased. And I think everybody on this call probably remembers those empty shelves of toilet paper. That's quite a visual for you. Anyway, N95 and KN95 masks for as much as $13 a mask. Bottom line is that, I can identify the people we had to sue. I don't see a need to put their name back out there again. They're in compliance now. Toilet paper for $3 a roll. Again, we had to take enforcement action to stop that kind of conduct. Eggs at 3 times the pre-emergency price. We've had to take action on that. And rice and a few other non-perishable food products at double and triple pre-emergency prices. So those are some things that we have to step up and take some action on. Let me wrap up, Madam Chair, by just pointing out, that the order is limited to COVID-related price gouging and will end when the governor's emergency declaration is terminated. But there's other emergencies that happen. Sadly, they do happen with frequency, extreme weather events, other things like that. And we need a permanent piece of legislation enacted not by the governor during an emergency, but by the legislature, the people's house, so that all of us can say, hey, this is what we've decided as a state. We need a law that will protect Minnesotans during these future emergencies, as Minnesota lacks the tools to combat price gouging that are common throughout the rest of the country. As the chair pointed out, 35 states, plus the District of Columbia, have state price gouging laws in place, including Texas. And so this does span the political spectrum. Just as I wrap up, two quick examples of recent price gouging in Minnesota that illustrate the problem. Shortly after 9/11, gas prices skyrocketed in Minnesota in September 2001. And the Attorney General investigated but lacked the ability to take action against those price gougers. In the winter of 2013 and 14, historically cold weather caused propane prices to spike to more than 3 times the usual prices in Minnesota, leading to a peacetime emergency declaration by the governor. And as and we should also be proactive. We should ensure that the protections in place for Minnesotans before the next natural disaster or public health emergency strikes, and make sure that consumers are not left at the mercy of price gougers. So, Madam Chair and members, I thank you for allowing the Attorney General's office to be involved in this conversation. If you have any questions, I have 2 staff who are ready to help answer questions. They're Jason Plagan-Cool, who's head of our consumer division, very able lawyer, and Eric Maloney, another really awesome lawyer who I hope the people of the state of Minnesota are proud of, because I'm proud of them both. They are in the trenches protecting Minnesotans every day. So I'll just wrap up right there, and they will be available to answer questions. So thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you for your testimony, Attorney General Ellison. Mr. Chair, would you like to introduce your next testifier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to introduce Bruce Newstead of the Minnesota Retailers Association. And before I hand it over to him, I just want to thank him and his association for their very constructive approach to this bill. We've had a lot of conversations in the last few days, in a week or so. They were difficult at times, and they pushed really hard, but in a very fair and constructive way. And I think the bill is substantially better for those conversations. And I really appreciate that kind of constructive approach. So Bruce Newstead.
Mr. Newstead, please introduce yourself, state your name for the record, and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Katiza-Watun and members of the committee. My name is Bruce Newstead. I'm the staff president of the Minnesota Retailers Association. We're a trade association of about 1,200 storefronts across Minnesota. About 1/3 of those are small businesses, usually 1 or 2 store operations. About 1/3 are mid-sized businesses, and about 1/3 are kind of some of the national brands that you'd recognize. Just want to take a brief moment this morning to speak in support of House File 844 as amended. We've greatly appreciated the opportunity to work with Chair Stevenson on the amendment that we think provides a better approach to addressing bad actors during an emergency. As amended, we think the bill goes a long way toward providing clarity for consumers, retailers, and regulators. As you heard, an important part of that clarity relates to when this price gouging statute would kick in. And as I heard, but I think want to be clear about, it really does require a governor's declaration of an emergency and an invoking of this statute with some specific geography. In addition, we really appreciate that the bill defines, while it defines what price gouging is, equally as important, it provides some clarity as to what price gouging is not. And I just want to thank the chair and others, the Attorney General, for recognizing the vast majority of Minnesota businesses do things right and won't get caught up in this. And I just want to say on a final note, because this statute does require a declaration, such as the one we're under right now, under the pandemic, we sincerely hope this statute is really rarely used. So thank you, Chair Stevenson. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for allowing me to testify. And we appreciate this thoughtful dialogue on this bill. We know these conversations are difficult. And as the chair pointed out, once you sort of end up outside of your comfort zone all the way around. But we pledge to continue to work with the chair and legislators and other stakeholders as this bill progresses. So happy to stick around for any questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newstead. My internet had a bit of a delay there. Sorry if I'm on delay. Next on my list, I have Jamie Poole with the Minnesota Grocers Association. Please excuse mispronunciation of your name. Please introduce yourself and state your name for the record.
Madam Chairs, members of the committee, Jamie Poole. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this morning. Again, I am Jamie Poole, president of the Minnesota Grocers Association. I'm here just to talk about House File 844 and the realities that our industry experienced during the COVID-19 crisis. I want to thank Chair Stevenson. He certainly has been open in discussion with us and for bringing this conversation forward. It's an incredibly important conversation, but I do think it needs to be well-rounded. And I just want to share against what we experienced. As you all well are aware, Minnesota has a very unique culture in that we do have hundreds of hometown grocers and convenience stores, many of whom are independent, multi-generational, and locally owned. They create jobs, support local charities, and provide a safe, responsible shopping experience. The MGA is their state trade association. We have over 300 members with about 1,300 locations statewide, as well as wholesale, distributors, and manufacturers. We are tasked to support and represent industry while advancing the common good of our great state. As one of the only industries that remained open from day one of the pandemic, this conversation is really important and has consequences. And we want to share with you some of the frontline realities that we experienced. This last year has been unprecedented for everyone, and none of us have ever experienced anything like it. Our multi-generational grocers were certainly flabbergasted on what happened to our stores. We worked nonstop around the clock to bring food to the communities we serve. A supply chain had challenges, and as you heard from the Attorney General, there were challenges. We worked with resources that went above and beyond to bring food and necessities to our neighbors. As things broke down, we used restaurant supply, we used capacities that we hadn't used before to try to minimize those disruptions, but it did bring new challenges. Our customers experienced changes. For the first time in many of their lives, they were not getting the products that they were used to seeing. Things weren't available on the shelves. Again, as you did hear the Attorney General, and I'm sure everyone here experienced. You couldn't possibly get that big roll of toilet paper that you got before. There were maybe single rolls. Things changed. People shopped in different stores. They brought different brands. Things that were price leaders couldn't be price leaders anymore. It was a very complex and confusing environment for customers. And the grocers were trying to navigate to the best of our ability. But none of this constituted price gouging. Yet that's not what we ended up experiencing. In March, when the Executive Order 2010 was issued and a subsequent media campaign began, the price gouging complaints poured into the AG's office. We had a fantastic working relationship with the AG's office, and we helped our members navigate because it was most important that they stayed on the floor and got food to the customers. The folks that were hit the hardest by these complaints, unfortunately, were our rural stores and our ethnic markets. There were some communication and understanding barriers. Our rural stores are single operators who actually are stocking the shelves, running the grocery cash registers and doing the books, and they had the largest complaints and the largest problems. The price gouging became almost a point of contention between grocers and their customers, which was unfortunate in a time when there were so many pressures. They were tasked with providing over 6 weeks of invoices to prove they weren't price gouging in the middle of this crisis. They were working to stay open, meeting the needs of the community, and providing a safe environment to very, very fearful customers and employees. Just in one example, we saw eggs increase anywhere from 95% to 222% at retail. And that was pure increase that the retailer experienced. Many of the products we even tried to absorb as much as we could to help our customers. We worked with the AG office. As you heard, they saw over 2,400 complaints. Out of all of those, very few actually brought price gouging forward. Many of them were actually traced all the way back to farm. And so that's a whole nother complexity in how supply chain works. This is an exhaustive amount of paperwork and man hours for all involved. Again, in the middle of a crisis that we aren't knowing how to manage. Imagine being a mom and pop store with very few employees and you're pulling 6 weeks worth of invoices. The bill before you today is very well intended and we understand the purpose and the direction, but it does not lay all the foundation to address some of these complexities. It does bring forth still that confrontational for those that aren't price gouging. we do think there needs to be some kind of component for blatant retail overcharging. Unfortunately, there are bad.
Ms. Poole, I apologize. We're on a tight schedule today. If you could wrap up, please.
We do know this disproportionately affects brick and mortar, and we hope to be part of a more in-depth conversation as this does move forward, making what's right for both customers, supply chain, farm to fork. Again, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and we look forward to working further with Chair Stevenson.
Thank you. Members, we will move to discussion. Do I have any questions or comments? Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the discussion today. I just had a couple questions, and I could direct it to the bill author, Representative Stevenson, or the AG's office if they prefer to answer. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about how you thought about the 30% kind of cutoff. It's my understanding that the DE amendment makes it so that 30% or less is not considered a gross disparity. And then kind of in addition to that, I was wondering if you could, is there a definition of gross disparity that's easily understood by our retailers so that they kind of know what the rules of the game are when it comes to this new law?
Chair Stevenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Rasmussen, excellent questions. So the 30% safe harbor was an idea that was initially brought to me by the retailers. And I thought it was a very reasonable idea to have a safe harbor in the bill, because I think that retailers should, and all participants in the economy should be able to have some certainty that know that by raising their price during a pandemic because of modest amounts or other factors, that they're not going to be subject to a price gouging investigation. And kind of for a lot of the reasons that Ms. Poole and the grocers just raised. Initially, I was looking at a much smaller margin than 30%, but I, had a great conversation with the retailers and others about that, and looked at going up to about 30% because it's, common to see the argument that ultimately persuaded me was it's common to see sale prices of 20 or 25% in the retail space. And so if you had the sort of, I don't know if you'd want to say misfortune or coincidence of ending a sale right as a disaster struck, you'd want some certainty that ending the sale wouldn't expose you to some liability. So that's where that comes from. I do think it's important to recognize, as I've said all along, that the vast majority of people who operate in Minnesota businesses want to do the right thing, don't want to hurt their friends and neighbors, want to be helpful during an emergency, right? And so we want to provide some certainty for those people that they aren't exposed to liability. Your second question about what constitutes a gross disparity. Well, that term is used in the definition of unconscionably excessive under the amended A4 definition. And it occurs when there is a big difference between the price before the emergency and during the emergency, as long, in excess of that safe harbor amount, that 30%. And it also talks in that section about it not being substantially related to the increase in the cost of obtaining or selling the good or providing the service. So when we talk about the example of eggs that Ms. Fuel brought forward, if a grocer is experiencing that price up the supply chain, that's excluded from a gross disparity and unconscionably excessive by the nature of the statute, right? We're not going to punish people for things that happen up the supply chain.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Stevenson. Appreciate that. And my concern is, as kind of the grocer stated earlier, this is just going to put an undue burden on the retailers to basically have to prove that price increases came from other places in the supply chain. And I have a lot of mom and pop independent grocers, retailers in the district that I represent, and I know that, as you said earlier, Representative Stevenson, they all act in good faith, and their customers are not just their customers, but are their neighbors and their friends. And I worry about the undue burden that this would put on them. And then the other concern I have, with the bill is, one of the big issues that we all saw as a part of the pandemic, and unfortunately Texas has experienced with their weather crisis, is empty shelves. And I actually think that sometimes pricing can be a useful tool to head off hoarding behavior that we saw, both during our pandemic and in others. And so I worry that this will prevent retailers and others in the supply chain from taking smart action that actually helps ensure that there is toilet paper, water bottles on the shelves, gasoline at the gas stations, to make sure that we can get critical resources to people during that time. I know there's other tools that can be used, but I worry that this could lead to actually more empty shelves and not fewer empty shelves. Last follow-up question I had, Madam Chair, was on, does this bill, touch on all retailers? Would it affect Amazon, eBay, gas suppliers, or is this really focused on kind of our brick and mortar Minnesota retailers?
Chair Stevenson.
Madam Chair, Representative Rasmussen, I don't believe there's any limitation on whether it's brick and mortar or otherwise. A seller as defined under the bill is broadly defined and doesn't contain a limitation that would apply only to brick and mortar. If I could just take a minute though and say that, I do worry about undue burden upon businesses. And I think that we've made an effort to accommodate that when we talk about the safe harbor and other provisions. But I really, with respect, I have to say that the undue burden that I'm most concerned about are the people who aren't going to be able to get food and water during an emergency because the prices are ridiculous and out of control. And that, I think, should be our primary focus, is making sure that people have the essential goods and services they need to survive in a pandemic or an emergency. When people are profiting, charging $1,000 a night for a hotel room, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. And that's the undue burden that we should be focused on with respect. I mean, we need to have accommodation for business, the needs of businesses, but what we really also need to be focused on is how people survive in these circumstances. And I just have to disagree with your idea that high prices are a way to manage supply. The idea that people who have means should have greater access to goods and services during an emergency than people without. I just take strong exception to that. Everyone deserves the opportunity to keep their family safe in an emergency like that, not just rich people who can afford high prices.
Representative Lee is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chair Stevenson, for bringing this forward. I have a question for the Attorney General, just trying to understand the process. For the Attorney General's office, what do you have right now in place for those communities that may be limited English speakers if they wanted to report a potential violation of this going forward? And do you have the resources necessary to be able to communicate with our community members that don't speak English as a first language?
Mr. Plagencool, or perhaps, I'm not sure who wants to take that, please.
This is Assistant AG Eric Maloney. I'm happy to field that. Thank you, Chair and Representative Lee. So this is actually an issue we've thought a lot about, both in our price gouging work and just kind of in our general interaction with the community for our more typical consumer complaints. So we have kind of two different things that we've put in place. I know in the phone room we have some people who can handle phone calls that are multilingual, and they can handle, I think, a pretty wide variety of languages. We also put out a lot of our publications in multiple languages. And I know for complaint forms, we do have some forms, although not all, and I think we're kind of working to beef up the different forms that we have, but I know we have forms that are available for consumers in multiple languages. So it's definitely something that we're thinking about and trying to make sure that we can hear from as much of the community as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Representative Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that too. And I would just, encourage members of the committee and for the legislature for us to really consider the Minnesotans out there that may fall prey to some of these practices just because of their ability to speak a certain language or not, and for us to really think about the resources that we could provide for the Attorney General and the agencies that are charged with protecting our consumers in the state. So thank you, Chair Stevenson, for bringing this forward.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the bill author, Representative Stevenson, boy, I tell you, I know what you're trying to do here, and I think it's a very noble idea. But I also am concerned about the spread of additional unintended consequences. And first of all, I'd like to say that if you happen to be a smaller community across the state of Minnesota, you have a grocery store, a hardware store, or other type of retail establishment. Many of the school districts, many of the cities try to do business with those retailers in the community because they are the ones who pay the taxes to support those local municipal services and school services. They oftentimes have contracts to provide fuel. They have contracts to provide food for childcare programs and before school and after school lunch programs. And when a pandemic or an emergency or an unforeseen disaster, thus by the name disaster, occurs, they don't have the ability on a dime to be able to spend and to be able to fulfill all of their obligations potentially to their contracted parties, as well as the general public. And I have experienced in past disasters where the community has reached out through local government to partner with hotels once they identify who has lost housing, what type of housing isn't there. What my question is, how do we protect those very valuable and limited resources in your bill where people who may not have been first in line to be able to acquire that under your plan? How do we take care of the rest of those people, the folks who are displaced? How do we even know that those hotels are going to be safe to be able to put people there? By putting the pricing in place, it buys some time to be able to make sure that we have prioritization of food services, retailing services, as well as accommodations during disasters. I will have some more follow-ups, but I think we'll just start with that. If Representative Stevenson could comment about how he anticipates the bill to deal with those kinds of things.
Chair Stevenson, care to respond?
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, you know, when you talk about prioritization, you're talking about prioritization by ability to pay. And you shouldn't have to depend upon protecting your family to be to have abnormal means to be able to afford $1,000 a night hotel room because it's the only place where there's electricity, and the person who operates it is trying to make a buck. You know, that shouldn't be how we make these decisions. This bill is not an end all be all. It's not the complete guide document to how we're going to handle disasters and emergencies. And as I said at the beginning, you know, I believe, and I know from my own experience, that across Minnesota, not just in our small towns, but in our suburbs and in our large urban centers, most Minnesotans try to take care of one another during hard times. We see that all the time. They try to do the right thing. We're talking about a few bad actors and holding them accountable for behavior that I think we all would agree is reprehensible. That's what this bill is about.
Madam Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll.
The bill author continues to grab onto a nice soundbite, which is $1,000 for a hotel room and priority to be able to get those by being one's economic wealth. What about holding those assets from anyone? Because that's maybe what the proprietor would do. And then are we going to have a bill in a couple of years that because of the disaster, we have to require these places to be open to do retailing, to make their services available? There is a certain sense of when there's an emergency situation or disaster, that things tend to whipsaw for a reason until we can figure out what is happening and where things are going. We see that in the marketplace all the time. We see that in the stock market.
Chair Stevenson.
I'll take you back to the March of last year. We're almost on the 52nd week anniversary of the 2-week anniversary of needing to shut the state of Minnesota down because of the pandemic. The markets had fallen precipitously. What did they do once the markets found equilibrium again? The markets were back and people were restored. Some haven't regained their wealth yet as a result of that, but this is what happens in these situations. I see it kind of disingenuous where you're putting one industry, the hotel industry. What about the children who aren't going to be able to get food in those programs from the grocery store because they're putting the products out on the shelf, or others are they're closing down, or there's looting that takes place because these businesses are trying to figure out and assess what their obligations are to other customers within a marketplace, which could be helping the very same people that you say this bill is trying to help. I find it kind of interesting. Madam Chair, if Representative Stevenson could respond to that. And I do have one other follow-up that I need to talk to the bill author about.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Chair Stevenson.
Well, Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, I'm kind of incredulous that you think that the solution to the possibility of shortages during a pandemic, and you even raise the specter of looting, is price gouging, is having enormously high prices. You know, that is not the way that we want to decide who has food, water, and essential services during an emergency. I don't think. It's just incredible to me that would be the suggestion. What this bill is about is very narrowly targeting people who are engaged in behavior that no one, I think, can defend, which is trying to profit off the misery and desperation of other people. And it's just incredible to me that your suggestion is that the solution to shortages or other things that happen during these disasters would be price gouging and profiteering.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm not going to say that the chair is impugning my motive on this, but by saying that my desire to deal with this is price gouging, I'm simply talking about basic economics, about supply and demand. When we have a disaster that occurs, first responders go to those disasters and try to assess and triage the situation, and they prioritize what the needs are going to be. And if there isn't adequate resources within that community because they have been already used in other ways, not only are you disadvantaging the people that they're trying to support and triage through public services, you're also affecting other people who are not able to get the supplies and prioritizing those. Markets have reactions. I'm sure you've taken a few economics classes in your time, Representative Stevenson, as a result of that. Executive Order 2010 appears to have done the job that's necessary, and there are no two disasters that are identical. And to try to put in place something that's going to be an end-all be-all for all disasters is somewhat problematic. Madam Chair, my follow-up and final at this point, depending upon how the question is answered, I may have a follow-up. I understand that we're going to be sending this bill to the General Register, and there are civil fines that are in here. Is there a change in House rules where the Civil Law Committee would not be seeing civil fines and having to weigh in on that? Have I missed something in our rules this year?
Chair Stevenson.
Madam Chair, Representative O'Driscoll, we did make some changes to automatic referrals in the House rules this year. The referral to civil law is a permissive referral. We did check with the chair of the Civil Law Committee, who indicated that a hearing in that committee, in Judiciary and Civil Law, in that committee was not necessary.
Madam Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, I look forward to a protracted debate and discussion on the House floor regarding civil fines, since we have perhaps for pandemic reasons, gouged out some of the committee processes or cut them out to try to expedite legislation this year. Gee, disasters do call for special considerations, Representative Stevenson. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Chair Stevenson, if you would, I have a quick question. I'm sure that in considering this legislation and the proposal and all the conversations that you had with the various retailers and the Attorney General, I'm curious how this proposal relates or kind of reflects some of the other 35 states that already have this legislation in place.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. As I kind of alluded to in my opening, other states take much tougher approaches. This is a compromise measure. When I mentioned earlier, fines in Texas for price gouging can be $250,000. Much more severe than what we're talking about here in Minnesota. When you have 35 states, there's multitude of different approaches in those states, but I really think that ours is a reasonable, thoughtful compromise approach.
Thank you for that. Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. or Madam Chair and Mr. Chair, the bill author, the question I would have is back when I was a truck driver and I was driving the day that 9/11 happened. And I remember that night when I was making my deliveries, when I was going to the gas stations, the price of gasoline jumped from my 115, 130-ish to some gas stations it went to over $3. Some gas stations I saw that night, that very night, over $6 up in Forest Lake, if I remember. And it was in St. Paul. Actually, it was the Holiday gas station store right next to the Capitol on Rice Street there that we're all familiar with. That was the one where I had to wait to make my delivery in a long line of cars to even get into the parking lot because they'd all lined up. And it's my understanding that your bill defines an essential good as fuel, and that what is it defined as in terms of an increase 30% over a 7-day period? Well, it was triple that. It would have been a 300% increase, right, to $3 at the Holiday store in St. Paul there. If that did not happen, that was not an example of somebody trying to gouge or take advantage of misery. As it's been characterized, it wasn't bad actors trying to profit. It was simply a response to market forces. And I'm concerned that if that were not allowed to happen, people would come in even at that price. Now, today, $2.50, $3 doesn't seem like a lot, but if you can put ourselves back 20 years, when we saw $3 gasoline was unheard of. And so if that were not allowed to happen, I'm very concerned that more people would have come and it would have exhausted the supply much faster. So if the government is going to interfere with market forces, natural supply and demand curves, what's going to happen is the supply is going to exhaust so much faster, and then nobody will have anything. So my concern is if, again, I think it's short-sighted to interfere under the intentions that we don't want to, we're assuming that when prices rise, it's bad actors trying to profit from misery, when in fact, again, it's a healthy way of ensuring that supply does not exhaust too quickly. So there's a concern, not necessarily a question, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. Thank you.
Chair Stevenson, if you'd like to respond to Representative Lucero, and then I think we're going to move to a vote.
I'll just make my closing comments and respond to Representative Lucero while I'm closing. I think that there's a misunderstanding that Representative Lucero has of the bill, and then a fundamental difference, philosophical difference that I think has been shown throughout the hearing between, the comments that some of the members of the minority have made here. The misunderstanding is that the bill pretty clearly articulates that normal supply issues that are happening up the chain are not price gouging, right? There's a language in there. It's not substantially related to an increase in the cost of obtaining or selling the good or providing the service. So if someone up the food chain, the supply chain breaks down, the cost of delivering the service or the good actually goes up, that's not price gouging. It's not impacted by this. We really are looking just at profiteering. So that's just I think a misunderstanding. But the fundamental difference in philosophy here is that there are people on this committee suggesting that's just fine, that the way we should ration supplies during emergency is on an ability to pay basis, and that your ability to provide food, water, housing, essential things for your family during emergency, it's fine for that to depend on if you have enough cash in the account to pay exorbitant prices. And it's fine if certain people profit off that. I don't think that's fine. And I don't think most Minnesotans think that's fine. I don't think Minnesotans think that we should be profiting off of disasters and misfortune and despair. That's not the way that we operate as a state. This bill narrowly targets bad actors, and I think that's appropriate. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll ask the committee for its support. And I'd renew my motion to place House File 844 on the General Register.
Thank you. Chair Stevenson renews the motion that House File 844 as amended be recommended to be placed on the General Register, and the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Stevenson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Cotizo-Wattoon.
Aye.
Representative O'Driscoll.
No.
Representative Barr.
No.
Representative Carlson.
Aye.
Representative Davney. Representative Elkins. Representative Haley,
No.
Representative Cagle,
Aye.
Representative Lee,
Lee, aye.
Representative Lilly,
Lily, aye.
Representative Lislagard,
Lislagard, aye.
Representative Lucero,
No.
Representative Olson,
Aye.
Representative Farr,
No.
Representative Rasmussen,
Rasmussen, no.
Representative Tice,
All right, thanks, Devin. No.
Representative Davney, Representative Elkins,
There being 8 ayes and 7 nays, the motion prevails and House File 844 as amended is being recommended to be placed on the general register. And I will go ahead and hand the virtual gavel back to Chair Stevenson.